Our patient, Nina Pham, is free of Ebola virus.
A Dallas nurse survives Ebola and is released today from a Maryland hospital. No need to panic. National health leaders map out the U.S. response to Ebola on Capitol Hill. Desire for unity. Pope Francis reaches out to the Orthodox Church ahead of his November trip to Turkey. And mass mobs. Catherine Elliott shows us how Detroit Catholics are using social media to fill pews for Mass. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Friday, October 24th, 2014. Good evening from Washington. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. There is joy, along with some new concern tonight, in the fight against Ebola. Nina Pham, the Dallas nurse who contracted the virus, is healthy now and out of the hospital. But Ebola has arrived in America's most populous city. We have team coverage tonight, beginning with Jason Calvi, who's at the White House. Jason?
Brian, Pham looked radiant and healthy as she walked into the White House today. She met with the president in the Oval Office, and we know they shared a hug. It's the happy conclusion to a week of her battling Ebola at the National Institutes of Health in Maryland.
Nina Pham is free of Ebola, and today she can finally hold hands with her mom and sister once again.
I would first and foremost like to thank God, my family, and friends.
The 26-year-old nurse caught Ebola while treating Thomas Eric Duncan, who died of the disease in Texas. She didn't receive any experimental drugs, but she did get plasma from another survivor of Ebola, Dr. Kent Brantley.
I can't pinpoint in one patient what was the turning point. The only thing that we're really happy about, that the turning point occurred.
Pham says faith played a key role in her recovery.
Throughout this ordeal, I have put my trust in God and my medical team. I believe in the power of prayer because I know so many people all over the world have been praying for me.
And now she's headed home.
As I return to Texas and try to get back to a normal life and reunite with my dog Bentley.
We love you, Nina.
And Pham asked for prayers for her fellow nurse who's being treated in Atlanta. That nurse we've heard today received the all clear on the Ebola tests, but so far no release date has been set. Brian?
All right, thank you, Jason. Answered prayers. Well, at yet another Capitol Hill hearing on Ebola in America, the Obama administration took a lot of heat today. Chief White House correspondent Suzanne LaFranchi covers that part of the story tonight.
Brian, this is Congress's third hearing on Ebola since Thomas Duncan died of the virus 3 weeks ago. The House Republican Oversight Panel not only slammed President Obama's choice of Ron Klain, a political insider, as the new Ebola czar, but also criticized the administration's lack of preparedness and response. While the administration has taken steps to better screen travelers entering the U.S. from West Africa, it has refused to ban flights from the Ebola hot zone. Some of the most dramatic testimony came from Deborah Berger, co-president of National Nurses United, which represents nearly 200,000 nurses.
The head of the CDC was wrong. We're relying on protocols coming from somebody who has been proven not to be correct. Isn't that true?
Those nurses were not protected.
Do we know how those nurses were infected or exposed, how they caught Ebola, for sure?
Thanks to the whistleblowing efforts of Brianna Aguirre, we know that the nurses did not have optimal standards.
And Republicans weren't the only ones with concerns today. Representative Elijah Cummings, the top Democrat on the committee, said the U.S. must continue to be vigilant in its response and continually reevaluate our protocol. He added there are many questions about this new case in New York City, but we cannot assume it will be the last. The Senate Appropriations Committee is scheduled to hold their own Ebola hearing on November 6th, just 2 days after the midterm elections. Brian?
All right, thank you, Suzanne. New York City's health commissioner has confirmed now that Dr. Craig Spencer has tested positive for Ebola. Spencer recently spent time in West Africa, ground zero for the Ebola outbreak. The 33-year-old was treating patients in Guinea. On Thursday, he started to feel fever, nausea, pain, and fatigue. These are all Ebola symptoms. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio says the city's health system is up to the task and there is no cause for alarm.
We have the finest public health system, not only anywhere in this country, but anywhere in the world. It's a public health system that has been developed over decades. It is ready for extraordinary challenges, and it's proving it as we speak. We are fully prepared to handle Ebola.
Spencer is in stable condition tonight at New York's Bellevue Hospital Center. Now some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. Police responded to reports of a shooting earlier this afternoon at a high school north of Seattle. Local TV stations reported 2 people were being airlifted to a hospital. Video shows students evacuating Marysville-Pilchuck High School in Marysville near Everett, Washington. A witness who lives across from the school calls the scene a tragedy and says he's never seen so many police. New York police officers remain critical but stable condition after being attacked by a man with a hatchet. Tonight, investigators may be a little bit closer to knowing why the man targeted law enforcement. Wyatt Goolsby is here tonight with details.
Brian, investigators have been sifting through all of the information, searching for a motive, but at this point, New York police have not ruled out that the attack could be related to terrorism. Authorities are looking at yesterday's security video of the attack, looking for clues. Here you can see 32-year-old Zale Thompson charging at 4 New York police officers with a hatchet. He injured 2 officers, one critically, before he was shot and killed. Investigators say Thompson had a criminal record in California and was discharged from the Navy for misconduct. Police have not found direct ties to terrorist groups, but his activity on social media indicated he was a convert to Islam and included rants about injustices in American society and oppression abroad. The extremist group ISIS is targeting Westerners with propaganda video, encouraging supporters to immigrate to the Middle East to join the fight.
I'm your brother in Islam here in Syria. I originally come from Canada.
Experts say there are a variety of reasons why Westerners like Andre Poulin, seen in the video, or Michael Zehoff-Bibeau, who opened fire in Canada's Parliament Wednesday, would adopt a radical ideology. Dr. Todd Helmus, a behavioral scientist in Virginia, says in some cases extremists want to help Muslims abroad.
In other cases, people are drawn because it's exciting. It's a lure of excitement. And you can see that excitement by following some of the Twitter feeds and the videos abroad. It's a potentially a thrilling life that young people are just attracted to.
And as ISIS continues to crank out their videos online, Western authorities say they'll keep a close eye on how extremists are recruiting their citizens. Thompson's attacks is the third on people in uniform in North America in a week. ISIS has recently called for sympathizers in the West to carry out attacks against men and women in uniform, putting authorities on alert. So, Brian, it is important to note, though, that authorities do not have a clear motive in this, so it's still very much under investigation.
Very disturbing. Thank you, Wyatt. Well, Pope Francis says his upcoming trip to Turkey is a sign of the deep link between Catholic and Orthodox churches and the desire for unity. He also says dialogue requires interior renewal and greater fidelity to Christ. His remarks came during a meeting today with a foundation that focuses on dialogue between the churches. A Vatican official spoke with News Nightly about the Pope's upcoming visit with Bartholomew I, the leader of the Orthodox Church in Turkey.
Now we discuss the theme of the primacy in the Church and above all the primacy of the Bishop of Rome. And this is a very difficult question because we have some problems of division in the history and to refine what is need for the unity between the Catholic and the Orthodox Church.
Pope Francis travels to Turkey November 28th through the 30th. That's his first trip to this majority Muslim nation. An online Catholic news site has gathered almost 300,000 signatures on a petition to help Middle Eastern Christians. The group is concerned that the disappearance of the Middle Eastern Christian community, especially in Iraq, presents a threat to humanity. Petition organizers say the international community has expressed little concern about these Christians.
We have the duty to do something for these thousands of people, mothers, old people, children with nothing today.
The Vatican is encouraged by the progress the petition is making. Midterms matter as we continue our EWTN News Nightly coverage of election 2014. Chris Deaton, editor of Red Alert Politics, an online publication by and for young conservatives, is with us. Polls show Republicans are closing in on the Senate, but there are still some toss-up states. They include Arkansas, Colorado, Georgia, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, New Hampshire, and North Carolina. Chris, where do you see the tightest races?
I think you just named the entire country. There are going to be a lot of races that really go down to the wire, and two to really highlight, I think, especially on election night, are going to be Iowa and Colorado. Cory Gardner is a Republican challenging Mark Udall in Colorado. He's run a very clean campaign. He's currently up by about 5 to 7 points. That'd be a very big pickup for the Republicans. Iowa currently has a Republican Senator Chuck Grassley and one who's retiring, Tom Harkin. Joni Ernst is the candidate, statewide legislator, pretty young, new to the political game, putting up a very strong challenge in that state, would also be a very big get for the GOP.
Midterm, off-year election, we hear all these terms and all the prediction about how low the turnout can be for these off-year elections. Who benefits if the turnout is higher than expected?
Well, the Democrats potentially could. Then you'd have a lot more minority voters potentially turning out, a lot of younger voters who perhaps tend to skew left in recent years if that number goes up. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens. It's probably not going to happen just because, like you mentioned, it is sort of an off year. Younger people tend to not turn out, the people that we represent for our publication. So it's going to be perhaps playing into the GOP's hand a little more this time around.
We had a Democratic strategist on last night who was telling us that they thought, you know, he was very truthful in saying that he thought the Republicans would be successful. I was curious if that might be part of their strategy to convince Republicans that they don't have to vote.
You never know, but, you know, they're going to be pretty fired up against this president this time, Brian. That's one of the big things this time around where, you know, the GOP is kind of run on a platform of making sure that, you know, these president's policies are on the ballot. That's going to encourage a lot of GOP voters to get out there and support their people running for Senate.
I've heard some Democrats say the president is not on the ballot, but his policies are, aren't they?
Yeah, he said as much a few weeks ago in a speech, and it was a little bit of a gaffe, and a lot of Democrats are trying to maintain their distance from him. His popularity is very low in a lot of the key toss-up states that you kind of mentioned at the top of the segment, so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens on Election Day.
Some of the ads out there are really ugly. They're attack ads, the Democrats using them against conservatives. Are they successful with this, and what are they doing? What are they trying to do?
Perhaps getting a lot of people out to the polls. You know, a lot of these, you know, attack ads are designed to, you know, gin people up in a year that kind of, like you mentioned, you know, enthusiasm to get out to the polls tends to be a little lower. So, you know, these sorts of ads are kind of designed to get people out to you know, vote on Election Day. And, you know, without them, people might not otherwise, you know, see what candidate, you know, candidate X is saying about candidate Y, and it's the best way to kind of gin up support for them to go out to the polling booth.
How do you think conservatives should react? Should they attack back or stick to the high road?
High road's probably the best time, the best road to take this time around, just because they're kind of playing on their turf. You know, the Democratic president now in, you know, his 6th year, going on his 7th, is kind of suffering some of the same fatigue that President Bush suffered, and that's, you know, turning out a lot of, you know, Republican people to support their own candidates at the polls. You know, the Republicans are trying to play mistake-free football, so to speak, probably in their best interest to stick to that as we go to November.
You're big on supporting and bringing attention to the millennials that are getting into politics. In fact, you feature some of these young millennials running for office. Where do they stand? What do they care about the most right now?
Well, they're seeing that their generation stands to take over this country, and you think about $17 trillion in debt. You think about the student loan crisis that is impairing a lot of these younger people nowadays. They're people who kind of understand how these issues hit home because they're among the demographics. So they really want to be agents of change, try to get into Washington, shake things up a little bit, and not so much on a left-right basis, try to bring a new generational voice to Congress, which is sorely needed, certainly as we see it.
I find it interesting that some of the front-running Republican potential presidential candidates are much younger than the Democrats.
Sure, and a lot of them are trying to. Yeah, it is, and a lot of them are trying to reach out to those younger people too. Rand Paul is a perfect example. Elizabeth Warren is a person whose name is kind of floated as a potential challenger. Exactly, Rubio's a younger guy. So yeah, absolutely. It's. I think we're kind of seeing the future right now. Very slowly.
Hillary, not so much.
Not so much.
She's more like my age.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Chris Deaton. We appreciate you being with us, the editor of Red Alert Politics.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Coming up, a Dallas chef helps troubled teenage boys by teaching them to play with knives and fire. On this Friday evening, October 24th, thanks for joining us for EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick. A recently released report from the U.S. Census Bureau shows that as of 2012, 7 million grandparents in the U.S. were living with a grandchild. That's 10% of all of us grandparents. The report out this week shows that in a third of the households, there is no parent present. That means 2.7 million grandparents are raising their grandchildren. Some other findings. Grandparents living with their grandkids in 2012 had lower levels of education and were more likely to be living in poverty. They are younger, too. 34% of grandparents living with grandchildren are in their 50s. Only 4% are 80 or older. And grandmas get the prize. Nearly 2/3 of grandparents living with grandchildren are women. Anna Beltran is Special Advisor to the National Center on Grandfamilies. That's a project of Generations United. She is joining us by Skype from Seattle. Anna, 10% of grandparents are now living with grandkids. What are the main factors contributing to that statistic?
Well, grandparents are stepping forward to raise these children for a number of reasons. Parents are increasingly substance abusers, or they may be incarcerated or deployed for military action, or perhaps they've died or have mental health issues. There are a number of causal factors resulting in these families forming.
Well, grandparents have been living with grandkids for centuries, but this really is a new kind of take, these grand families. It's a new name, not necessarily a new concept, but what characterizes these families today?
Well, they have a number of challenges because many of them many of these caregivers are raising the children without legal custody or guardianship, without any kind of legal relationship, and outside of the foster care system. So they have access issues to health care, to insurance, to educational enrollment for these children. So there are a number of challenges. On the plus side, all the research shows that we are wise to be relying on these caregivers who are heroically keeping these kids out of foster care because the children fare well, they have more stability and community connections. So it's a good thing.
Well, I love being a grandparent, but I don't have full responsibility for my grandkids. How does the role of grandparent shift when they're raising kids?
Oh, it shifts dramatically, and sometimes these grandmothers adopt the children even, so they become the parent legally as well. But the roles shift, and you become the parent basically. So you have to do all the carpooling and the meal preparation and all those things that are not as fun as baking cookies and the traditional grandparents things.
How are children faring in these situations?
They do very well. They often have special needs, and they often come from difficult situations because of what caused their own parent-headed family to fall apart. But they fare well with relatives. They maintain their family. They tend to be more stable in school. They do well.
Anna, I'm sure that these grandparents need a lot of support. What resources are there out there for them?
There are a number of resources, and more every day, which is the good news. There's one website which I've connected you with called grandfamilies.org. It has a number of resources on it and links. Grandfactsheets.org also has information available. There are kinship navigators in various states around the country. They're a tremendous resource for helping the families.
Well, thanks for being with us. Anna Beltran from Seattle by Skype tonight. We appreciate your input. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
And a Dallas chef says you can help troubled teenage boys by teaching them to play with knives and fire. Catherine Zeltner reports on one unconventional youth program that's changing lives one plate at a time.
In Dallas, Sunday dinners are a hot commodity. Once a month, top-notch chefs open their kitchens to newbies, hosting pop-up fundraiser dinners.
Turn it either way, I'm not going to complain. I'm going to teach them to play with knives and fire. It's going to make their life better, your life better.
An unconventional approach, given the kids all committed some kind of crime. Cafe Momentum takes teenage boys out of juvenile hall and teaches delinquents to make delicious food.
It was great. I had never had a real job before, you know what I'm saying, working with the program.
18-year-old Adolph Martin is a success story. a New Orleans transplant who moved to Dallas when he and his grandma fled after Hurricane Katrina.
So I got, caught up in doing little crimes and things like that, running with, people in my neighborhood.
But inside the Dallas County Juvenile Department, Martin met Chad Hauser.
I call him grandmother because he stays on me like my grandmother. He's great support like my grandmother.
And he still interns for the organization. The other boys have not graduated from the program yet, which is why we're not showing their faces. County officials say vocational programs like this lessen the chances these boys will be back in the justice system in the next year from about a 40% chance they'd reoffend to about 10%. Hauser makes sure participants get mentorship too.
You don't need to be a statistic. You don't need to go back. We're giving you the tools that you can just, keep going forward. I've made mistakes, and I've been afforded the opportunity to come back into society and give another swing at bat.
Every pop-up dinner Cafe Momentum hosts has been a sellout. Hauser is now working to open up a full-time restaurant, dishing out culinary and life lessons.
Group therapy, financial literacy, parenting classes. A lot of our interns are already parents.
This program could really change your life. Like, whatever you come from, you could do better.
Up next, mass mobs organized through social media are helping fill Detroit's historic Catholic churches that are in danger of closing. Thank God for Friday, and thank you for joining us for EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick. Empty pews are filling up in Detroit, where Catholics are using social media to encourage people to attend Mass. Our Catherine Elliott reports.
Taking a cue from viral flash mobs, some Roman Catholics have adopted the Mass mob, using social media to summon crowds to sparsely attended churches. Inspired by similar efforts in Buffalo and Cleveland, the Detroit Mass mob picks one historic house of worship per month and directs its followers there for a Sunday service.
It's a great way to show our faith, a great way to share our fellowship in our God, and to enjoy each other's company.
The most recent target was St. Francis d'Assisi Church, a century-old architectural jewel with a dwindling congregation and chronically empty pews.
Both sets of my grandparents came here. This was their founding parish in America. And to see how things have changed, I think it would make them very sad.
On this Sunday, Pat Olszewski and more than 1,000 others packed St. Francis and its collection baskets. The head of the Detroit area's sizable Catholic population is on board with the mass mob concept. And now he's seeing it in action. Archbishop Alan Vigneron celebrated Mass at St. Francis.
I think it's a response to a hunger they have to the gospel message.
A message getting around thanks to the power of social media, helping to inspire the masses. Catherine Elliott, EWTN News Nightly.
All right, thank you, Catherine. Well, the Pope's been doing it. Now even the Queen of England is tweeting. Queen Elizabeth II tweeted, "It is a pleasure to open the Information Age exhibit at the @Science Museum, and I hope people will enjoy visiting." This, her first tweet ever, came earlier this morning as the 88-year-old Queen opened a new gallery in central London's Science Museum. She signed the royal tweet, Elizabeth R. That's the same way she signs official documents. The R is for Regina, as in Salve Regina, Latin for Queen. Well, until Monday, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, watch again anytime you like on EWTN's YouTube page. For all of us at EWTN News Nightly, I'm Brian Patrick. Have a great weekend. We leave you tonight with a glimpse of last night's prayer vigil at Rome's Basilica of St. John Lateran, a send-off for missionaries who will proclaim the gospel in places like Tunisia, Mozambique, and Brazil. Good night and God bless you.